Hello friends, today we are going to discuss yet another poem that is the penultimate of my series Darkling Thrush by Thomas Hardy. It is the same thing, reasoning or because answer, and the poem is a unique one because you all know Thomas Hardy is the prince of pessimistic writers, is the prince among pessimistic writers. So let us not waste time in discussing other topics, and let us dive deep into your questions, as they should be based on Darkling Thrush by Thomas Hardy. So, question number 1. It is said that Darkling Thrush is nothing but something born out of Hardy's grim atheistic worldview because it presents us with a universe that has no God, no afterlife beyond our mundane existence. Question 2. The poem Darkling Thrush opens with a sense of death, desolation, decline, and decay because it is keeping with Hardy's general outlook of pessimism as he thinks with the passing away of great romantic era of 19th century and the coming of 20th century of technological advancement will strike the doom of poetry and art. Question 3. Darkling Thrush was originally titled by the Century's Deathbed, 1900, because the poet is gloomy and laments the death of the golden era of romantic poetry in 19th century. Let us move on to question number 4. The Darkling Thrush is an elegy because it is a mournful poem that deals with death. Here, the passing away of the century. Question 5. The poet is gloomy and morose because he is standing alone at the edge of a coppice, a thicket, and surveys a desolate scene on a wintry day as night descends. Question 5. Hardy's setting is more deadly because it is not only the winter of the year but a whole century where decadence of Western civilization is reflected. Question 7. Frost is called to be spectre grey because on a wintry day, frost made the landscape as grey as a ghost. Question 8. Winter's drag made desolate the weakening eye of the day because dregs suggesting the fallen snow and heavy fog make the scene desolate and sun looks dim and morose against this backdrop. Question 9. Hardy uses a few stern images like frost was spectre grey and winter drags because he wants to build up the scene of death and desolation. Question 10. The personification of the sun as the weakening eye of day that's turned dim and obscure for fog and mist at dusk is deliberately done because it contributes to the atmosphere of decline and death. Question 11. The simile of confused twining plants, bare and bereft of leaves, rising high, silhouetted against the sky like the strings of broken lyres, is very poignant because it adds to the general atmosphere of hopelessness and suggests lack of music and happiness. Question 12. And all mankind that haunted nigh had sought their household fire, because, as the weather is bleak and hostile outside, people take shelter indoors for warmth and comfort, where fire stands for hope and preservation. Question 13. The lands of features seem to be the century's corpse outlined because death of 19th century and its rotting corpse is apparent everywhere in the landscape. Question 14. The poet personifies century because it gives him scope to attribute human-like characteristics to the dead 19th century whose corpse is the land in front of him. Question 15. He scribed the cloudy canopy, the wind his death lament. The alliteration of sea sound is used because the poet wishes to intensify the atmosphere of gloom and deadliness, maybe. Question 16. The ancient pulse of germ and birth was sunken hard and dry because the cycle of birth and rebirth, which goes on for time immemorial, has stopped in cold winter, metaphorically suggesting creative depravity and barrenness. Let us move on to question number 17. And every spirit upon earth seemed frivolous as I, because as there is general atmosphere of bareness reflected in wintry landscape, similarly in the mental horizon every human being is lacking in passion and intensity. Question 18. At once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead. The assonance, that is alliteration, of a sound in the line is done because Thomas Hardy wants to capture the sound of a thrush's song, breaking the somber silence of death. Question 19. Bleak twigs is used because the poet is bent upon producing the impression of imperfect visibility and icy touch of death in twigs bare and dry. Question 20. The Darkling Thrush will intrude upon Hardy's gloomy world of pessimism because it bursts into full-throated ease of limitless joy, joyful song, which is strange as the environment is dead and hopeless. Question 21. The Darkling Thrush chooses an even song because it is song sung in the evening, significant as it is for an aged bird, but equally important for the last day of a century. You know, the even song is actually a church rite and it is sung at the church. Question 22. The poet has chosen an aged thrush, frail, gaunt, and small, in blast beruffled plume, because he wants to emphasize that it has lived long and learned so much so that it has weathered and survived the winter wind of 19th century. And though frail, gaunt, and delicate, the bird is able to lighten the dead and gloomy setting. Now you see some questions are rather a bit, the answers are a bit lengthy, but it is for your benefit that if it is lengthy, you may miss some portion of it. Somehow or other, if you can produce it, that will fetch you the desired mark. Question 23. The thrush has chosen to fling his soul upon such a depressing environment because the thrush is giving up its life to fight the gloom and pervasive depression. Question 24. There is so little cause for caroling of such ecstatic sound by the bird because, according to the poet, the physical world outside does promise nothing heartening, nor is there any prospect in the spiritual and mental arena of Victorian England torn by contrary poles of materialism and spiritualism. Or the question may be set in this way, but the answer would be the same as it is. The poet is dubious about the bird's ecstasy because you should write the same answer that has started there with because. Now question 25. Hardy's poem is named Darkling Thrush because darkling is an old poetic word for in darkness, and the thrush, though shrouded in darkness, affirms humanity that the good will be the end of bad. Question 26. The final note of Darkling Thrush is optimistic because the poet ends in an ambivalent note because these are two different questions. The first one is optimistic and the second one is ambivalent, but you will write the same answer. That is because he is not aware of the thrush's reasons for being cheerful, but that does not mean that situation is hopeless and he simply has not discovered it yet. This will be the answer of both the questions that has been said above. Now this is the last one, that is question 27. To describe Thrush's joy, Hardy has used illimited because had he used unlimited, it would mean excess. But illimited goes to mean an intense joy unaffected by knowledge of such things as the end of the year or the end of the century, which causes annoyance in mental health. So that's all for today, and this is the last but one, and I will finally produce you the to build a fire, but the build a fire is lengthy and the questions there are rather straightforward if you read the text. Okay, that will be also given in my next lecture. Thank you for patient hearing.